This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Happy New Year to all of those of y'all who are ready for some NBA basketball to be played in 2021. A lot is going down, aside from the dominance of teams like the Los Angeles Lakers and the Atlanta Hawks. Right, exactly. And the Philadelphia 76ers. Who'd have thought, man? The Phoenix Suns rolling big in the Western Conference. So many good things going on right now in the NBA. Enough storylines to have around, and we have not even hit the first week of January. That's why they play the game, baby. So let's go ahead and do things right for 2021. Let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, a boy who I've been doing this a little over 9 years now, man. Keeping this thing pristine and pure. My brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Happy New Year, my man, and welcome again to another exciting rendering of the NBA season.
Hey, man, I'm excited to be here as always, Cal. And my dude, it's been an amazing start to 2021 already. Dash away 2020, throw that thing all the way in the dumpster fire. We are ready to rock. The NBA is definitely sizzling right now. A lot of great topics as always. And you and me here, we're here to cover it all.
Absolutely, man. And again, we appreciate you guys who've been rolling with us for as long as you've been rolling with us. And to our new listeners, hey, welcome aboard. We hope that the content that we provide you is enjoyable listening, but also keep you well informed for everything happening in the association. As always, get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at Game Face Lead, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. So you know where to find us. Just look for the Baseline NBA podcast. Add us to your playlist. Allow us to be your go-to resource with all things happening in the association. Big up to our people on Dash Radio, our Dashers, listening to Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Be sure to check us out through the Nothing But Net Radio Network. And as always, man, if you want to hear all of our shows, if you miss us, whether we're dropping this content now or, hey, later on during the week, you feel the need to get informed about what's going on, be sure to check us out at www.thebaselinenba.com. As my man Shaw alluded to, we have got a lot to discuss. In our topic of the breakdown, we'll be talking about the Memphis Grizzlies. This is a team who I have expectations to position themselves to be participants in the Western Conference playoffs. But this recent injury by Ja Morant, how badly will this impact the team's chances? So we'll definitely get into that. My man Shaw, as always, the clever one that he is, has introduced us with a great topic for discussion in the drop. We are about adopting players, man. My man Shaw and his famous moniker, his young sons. Well, I'm going to be involved in that process as well, too. We will be talking about the young sons, the future of the NBA, guys that we should definitely keep on our radar this upcoming year. But before we get into that, there's a lot of things that obviously are going on, so we're going to cover a couple of news and notes happening in the association with my man Shaw. So let's get right into it, Shaw. One of the big things that's obviously taking place is with the Brooklyn Nets, a team that people have high expectations to make a deep run, if not possibly be the Eastern Conference representation for the NBA Finals. They have suffered a setback. I consider it significant with Spencer Dinwiddie being out indefinitely with a partial ACL tear. What do we make of this, and how bad does this set back the Brooklyn Nets?
Yeah, it hurts from a depth standpoint, really and truly. The one thing about Dinwiddie, not only is he just a good, competent two-way type of guard, if you will, a guy who can create, score, defend a little bit as well too. But he's the Kyrie insurance. So what happens when the insurance goes away? That's horrible news for the Brooklyn Nets, who need him as a starter in their lineup. They're going to start Timothy Luau-Cabarrot in the interim time, but Dinwiddie in a contract year, just tough going. Hopefully he'll be able to make it back because they haven't ruled him out for the season just yet. But tough sledding for the Nets to begin the year.
Well, like I said, I think Spencer Dinwiddie to me is really the team's MVP in so many different ways. And I don't know, maybe this will help the Brooklyn Nets really realize how important he is going to be, because I think it's going to test the veracity of what's going to happen with Kyrie Irving, his temperament, obviously Steve Nash's strategy in load management, because obviously he cannot risk to run his two best players ragged through the course of a 72-game season. So a lot now has to be taken into consideration. But more importantly, I just think that Spencer Dinwiddie's presence as that guy coming off the bench and producing quality minutes for a team that had already been together to me, it's really going to test whether or not the Brooklyn Nets are mentally prepared to handle this, because this is going to be a really challenging season, no matter how you slice it. It would have been challenging regardless of how many wins they get. It really comes down to continuity, and sometimes when your core players go down early in the season, it really pushes the gamut on relying on guys to step up and be captains, to be the voices, to keep everything together when things seem they're going to fall apart.
Yeah, I agree, and that puts more pressure on Levert as well now too, who was coming off the bench initially. So they're deciding not to start him to kind of keep him comfortable in his backup role. But he's somebody now who's definitely got to lead that second unit even in a better way than I think even he has been with Dinwiddie out, because Dinwiddie would also often alternate time with Kyrie, so he would help Levert kind of run that second team. But we'll see how it goes, man. Brooklyn probably going to be in the trade market for another wing of some point, but we got a little bit of time before we see that come to fruition.
Absolutely. All right, Shaw, out in Minnesota, Karl Anthony Towns, he's nursing a dislocated wrist. The Minnesota Timberwolves shot out hot out of the gate, really impressing everybody. Now they've kind of set themselves back. Currently, as we're recording, they're 2-3. You lose the big man, the big cat. No matter how you slice it, that's a big blow to this team. How long do you think Saunders and company can hold out without having the big cat on the floor?
They can't hold out without him. At the end of the day, this team is built to be around Russell and Cat specifically. Anthony Edwards has had some nice flashes to begin, but nobody on that roster can replicate and do what Cat does for them offensively specifically, and even on the boards a little bit as well. So hopefully this wrist injury will not take him out for too long of a period. It's kind of an indefinite time right now. He doesn't have to have surgery. But it's just dislocated and it hurts like hell. I'm sure I saw the injury when it happened. So the Timberwolves are kind of in a rough spot here without Cat, Naz Reid, and guys like that. They're just not equipped to kind of be able to do what he does.
All right. Out in Indiana, TJ Warren. Who'd have thought? It's interesting. We would have probably had him listed as possibly a young son, probably like one of those wayward orphans. It's like, we weren't anticipating he was going to be so special in our lives over the last couple of seasons, and so will Jimmy Butler. Probably would suffice to say something like that as well too. But big blow to the Indiana Pacers as he is out indefinitely due to a foot injury. I'd look at it more on, it's unfortunate for TJ Warren, just simply because he's really put together a pretty good stretch of play for himself over the last year and a half that's actually put him on the map to be a legitimate player. I know there was high expectations for him when he came out of college, but I think he's now kind of turning the corner. For him to suffer this foot injury for an Indiana Pacers team that a lot of people are expecting are going to still be a decent basketball team, I just think it's more unfortunate for him more than anything else.
Yeah, him for sure, and the Pacers, who started off the season hot as well, and they need all of their guns, all of their weapons, especially with Oladipo trying to have some hoops redemption himself. Warren is a guy who was proving it this past year, especially he was masterful in the bubble until the playoffs, but he was really, really good offensively, has extended his range out to three as well. And this Pacers team, for all that they are, they need a guy like TJ Warren to kind of help bolster that offense, especially if Oladipo were to struggle, or if Sabonis and Turner weren't able to kind of get it going along with Brogdon. He's just a nice option to have for them, and a guy who can play, the 3 and the 4 position.
All right, Shaw. And then it's ironic because Donnie Walsh, I think, has probably been involved with the Indiana Pacers like 15 times over at some point. But
yeah, right.
But he is finally stepping away from the game of basketball. Donnie Walsh has, been regarded as probably one and revered, loved, hated, every adjective you could possibly think of as executives go. I'm sure he's left a lot of love for the New York Knicks organization as well too. But he's finally stepping down. What do we make of it, and what do we say about his legacy and his career as an impact in the game of basketball as one of the as an executive to the game?
He's been around for a long time, a true OG, a guy who's done, multiple millions of deals, evaluated hundreds, if not thousands of players over the course of his time, and just, has such great, I think, reverence when it comes to the NBA space and people who've been in the front office and administrative at the top, in the NBA. And he's somebody who I've definitely respected, from afar. He's never been in charge of one of my favorite teams, if you will, so to speak. But he is somebody who I've understood has been and has roots in this league and roots in the game. It's just going to be so missed. And thankfully, he can go out kind of on his own terms here in Indiana as they kind of usher in maybe a new regime a little bit. But, shouts to Donnie Walsh and all that he's been able to do throughout his great NBA career.
All right, Sean. And finally, man, sad news, and I'm glad we're probably doing this more in the beginning than we usually do it towards the end of our show. But sad news in the game of basketball, in the world of basketball. Legendary player, Hall of Famer Paul Westfall has passed away at the age of 71. Five-time NBA All-Star, three-time first-team All-NBA. Won a championship with the 74 Celtics, 318 wins as a coach for the Suns, Supersonics, and the Kings, and also has been recognized for the 25 points that he scored in what people have called the greatest game ever played, the 76 NBA Finals. It's just sad, I know people live a full life probably when they get around towards that age and stuff, but I still think that there were so many years left ahead for Paul Westfall's presence in the NBA community and the culture, and to see him go at such an early time frame, it's just sad to see.
Yeah, truly a smart guy and an innovator, if you will, and some of those, especially those Suns teams. When I was growing up, watching him coach those teams, obviously didn't get to see him play, in his heyday. But somebody again, same thing as in this situation as Walsh. I have a lot of respect for what Westfall has been able to do for the NBA and throughout the course of his career as well. And this, if there's one sour note to start 2021, this is definitely it.
All right. Well, there you have it. News and notes already going on in the association. And as always, man, if you got any comments or thoughts, be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at GameFace Lee. Coming up, it is time for the breakdown. Callie, Warren, Shaw. We will be discussing the Memphis Grizzlies, the blow that they have now had impacted on them with the injury to Ja Morant. How bad will this set this back? Is this team now out of the loop when we talk about NBA playoffs in the Western Conference? You'll find out more here on the breakdown.
Cigar City Brewing, Florida's premier craft brewery, delivers vibrant tropical flavor with High-Low IPA, a citrus-forward craft beer inspired by the bold tangerine, mango, and clementine qualities of High-Low IPA. At 4% ABV and 120 calories, High-Low IPA delivers highs in flavor and lows where you'd want them. Check out cigarcitybrewing.com for more information on this Florida original. Cigar City Brewing, Tampa, Florida. Please enjoy responsibly.
Time to break it down. Time now for the breakdown. Callie, Warren, Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And our topic for the breakdown, the Memphis Grizzlies. We often talk about this team, and I'm not going to get into the reminiscent part. I think a lot of people, look at a small market team like the Memphis Grizzlies, and most are just really in awe because of the way they play big, they play physical, and yet they represent a small Midwest-like kind of population of people that really appreciate the game of basketball. And I don't know, maybe if you go to colleges like the University of Memphis or you go to University of Tennessee, you get a sense that a lot of them want to play big boy basketball, and maybe for the Memphis Grizzlies, this is probably the way things are going to be. In the sense that for them to be able to keep up with winning and staying relevant when you lose some of your key players, the Jaren Jacksons, the Justice Winslows, and now major blow with Ja Morant going down to a grade 2 ankle injury, going to be gone for 3 to 5 weeks. Shaw, when I think about this Memphis Grizzlies team, the one thing that they can always rest their laurels is they have to play ugly to win. They have no problems doing it. But something tells me that maybe this team has a little something in them that might allow them to be able to maintain, adapt to the pace and the way that the game is being played. Do you see that happening for this Grizzlies team?
Yeah, I think Memphis, Taylor Jenkins and company, they're going to have to switch the way they play. Ja gave them obviously a massive jolt of energy, being able to really get them out in transition on a regular basis. And Tyus Jones is not that, and it's not fair to even ask him to be that. So you're seeing them in the early going after the Morant injury run a lot of their offense through Kyle Anderson, slow-mo. I mean, he's appropriately nicknamed, which therefore dictates the pace in which they're going to actually have to play, especially without Jaren Jackson for still an undetermined amount of time. I think this Memphis team is in a lot of trouble. I've heard a lot of very interesting things. It's kind of why we wanted to talk about it here, because some people think they're going to be at the bottom of the West, when Morant comes back and may not have the opportunity to get back into the play-in tournament. I don't know if I'm quite there yet. I don't know if they'll be 14th or 15th in the West, but it's going to be tough sledding without Morant, at least for the next 3 to 5 weeks.
Well, I agree with you in the sense that it's going to be tough sledding without Ja Morant. I mean, you can't replace a guy who's right now giving you about 26 points per game, who's shooting a little over 54%. He's doing everything, for this team. But I think the reason why this team may struggle in the way that you're talking about, Shaw, is that their team is completely eviscerated with injuries. They don't have Ja Morant. They don't have Jaren Jackson Jr. right now. They don't have Justice Winslow. Okay, I think DeAnthony Melton is on the mend. I think he may be expected to return. There's just a lot of bodies that maybe Taylor Jenkins could be relying on from a continuity standpoint to be able to at least keep them in the mix. And even to some degree, Grayson Allen is not 100% either. So it's not even so much that it's full-fledged injuries. It's that the team itself is there. You cannot look up and down and say without certainty if everybody on this team is not at 100% full tilt ready to go, which given the talent that you have for the Memphis Grizzlies and given where they situate themselves, they can't afford to only be a percentage of themselves to compete. They actually have to have all bodies about as like 90% above capacity from a health perspective to be able to maintain the level of play that's going to be required to prevent themselves from being at the bottom of the conference.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing with Winslow, he hasn't played a game yet. So even getting him to, not even getting him back, just getting him to begin with, and then trying to implement him into your system to understand what's going on, like that takes time, and if and when or whenever he's able to return, he's not going to just snap into form. And the same thing with Jaren Jackson, who's coming off meniscus surgery. So I'm concerned. And to me, the biggest issue really is like, I didn't think they were going to be in the play-in tournament anyway. So where does that leave them now with a pretty loaded draft class as by, the draft experts accounts, should they're not going to tank, you know what I mean? But if they don't make the playoffs, is it the end of the world? Because that puts them in the position to potentially get another high draft pick to add to an explosive and kind of building young core. Valanciunas is a good basketball player. I like him a lot as a center, but you can't give him like 30 touches a night. You know what I mean? Like he's just not built for that. He doesn't even have the stamina for it. So Brandon Clark, who I also like too, I think he needs somebody to help him initiate offense. And without Ja there, Tyus and Kyle Anderson, those are the guys who are going to be your primary ball handlers and initiators, and they can get it done in pinches. But the Western Conference is too tough, I think, for Memphis to be able to feel like, okay, we're going to be still in this, as an 8-9 seed for the next month. And then how many games do you fall back by the time Durant gets back, by the time Jaren Jackson gets back, and if and when Justice Winslow returns at all?
Well, I think part of that is as well too is going to be determined by where the Southwest Division also sits, right? Like, look, the New Orleans Pelicans don't look all that impressive to me right now. They're going to be inconsistent. I know a lot of people are riding on Zion Williamson. He's going to be the guy, and Brandon Ingram coming off of a great season last year. Arguably most improved, right? My whole thing is you may buy yourself time inevitably, incidentally, right? Or accidentally, I guess is the best way to put it, because of the fact that you just don't know the circumstances of where you're going to be in your own division. I think maybe you have to look at it from a short view rather than the long view, because I think everybody believes that all roads lead to, all right, well, where do we want to sit in regards to trying to get into the playoffs? I think, where do you want to sit in regards to where you are in your division? In some instances like this, like what's going on with the Memphis Grizzlies, Shaw, I do think divisions have a level of importance. Maybe not in the grand scheme of how we look at things when it comes to the NBA, but I just think from a short view scheme, if you're Taylor Jenkins, because no matter what you do, you still played a boatload of your games against the teams in your division. So if you're only within a few games, from the Pelicans, from the Houston Rockets, or, whoever that's in there, right? And maybe even the Dallas Mavericks, right? Because they may get off to a slow start. If you're somewhere still, relatively within striking distance, I think you ultimately have to start weighing the option of, depending on what happens to Ja Morant when he comes back, are you going to ease him in? Do you still see a pathway for the Grizzlies to probably get in there? So do you rush him in there to help this team out? But I also think what it comes down to as well, too, is the way that the rest of this team develops, primarily the younger players. Now, there's one player that we have not talked about. I'm a little surprised by that. He is, listen, he's the player that everyone loves to hate, apparently, right now, in Dylan Brooks. But this is a great opportunity for him to put himself in that conversation where I had him as a dark horse winner to be most improved player. You don't buy into him. I get that. But give me another player on this squad right now over the next 3 to 5 weeks that you would have total confidence is going to have the capacity to score the basketball the way that I think Dillon Brooks will have the opportunities to.
Well, the opportunities are going to be there. It's funny you mention him because same thing. Listen to a lot of different shows and podcasts out there, and I think it was Antonio Daniels, and Rich Kamala. They were talking about the Memphis Grizzlies, and they're like, "Well, we know Dillon Brooks. He likes to shoot. If there's going to be somebody on this team who is like, okay, Ja's down. Hey, load up. It's going to be Dillon Brooks. It's not a shot that he doesn't like. I think Brandon Clark has some opportunity as the aforementioned Valanciunas, even Desmond Bane coming off the bench, but no one is going to be. I'd be stunned, shocked, and amazed if Dillon was not their leading scorer and their leading shot taker throughout the course of the next month while Ja is out. Now, again, when Ja returns and if and when Jaren Jackson returns, that obviously has to shift. But it's an interesting thing because can you win successfully in the Western Conference with a pretty tough schedule that the Grizzlies are going to have over the next month or so? I think, I don't remember how many opponents, but I think they only play, as of right now, maybe 2 teams that are quote unquote under 500. I think those are the Timberwolves. Even the upstart Cavs, they get the Cavs twice, and the Cavs are playing good basketball right now. Can you win like that? And that remains to be seen. So it's an interesting proposition, I think, for Dillon Brooks and company. But I think Taylor Jenkins is going to have to figure out this offense and the defense. Right now, 19th and 20th, respectively, on offensive and defensive rating.
Agreed. But I think a lot of it, too, is finding guys and I guess this is the reason why it's so important when you lose a star player. One of the things I was thinking about as we were kind of coming to getting ready to record this podcast was the perception of how important it is or why is it important for you to have like a star player. And I often sometimes reference to the idea that some teams are built in knowing that they're going to need their star player to perform. And some teams are built knowing that their star player has an overall impact on building confidence because that's the team that he is building with. Or that, rather than the organization building around that team. If you really look at it, while there's confidence in the Memphis Grizzlies because they got Ja Morant, they kind of are building with Ja Morant, this team. This is a young basketball team. So I think to your point, Shaw, long-term vision, if this season is going to be a complete loss, it's not going to be a loss on the idea that they want to see some of these guys have confidence to compete, confidence that they belong. And I think we saw that last year or this past season with the way that they competed in the bubble. So the only downside to this is the injury bug got them, right? What I would probably argue is if the organization shifts the way that they're looking at how this team is being constructed and being built because of the injury to Ja Morant, then you put yourself in danger. Then you put yourself in a realm where this is not the Memphis Grizzlies. This is not how you tried to build this basketball team. And because of it, you may deviate from the plan. The plan may be short-fused right now because of the injuries. But I think what this comes down to is you need to see that this team is going to evolve. So if a guy like Dillon Brooks gets the capacity to shoot the basketball, I like seeing that because when Ja Morant comes back, remember, he's a play creator. And so for me, he wants to get the ball to guys that have confidence shooting. Desmond Bane, confidence shooting, right? Grayson Allen, confidence shooting. These guys need more opportunities to shoot the basketball. And so if you're going to be left out on an island, do it being productive with what you don't do enough of, which is shooting the basketball. And I think that could be a great opportunity for the Memphis Grizzlies, whether they win or lose, for them to be able to put themselves in a better position when Ja Morant comes back.
So let me ask you this, just kind of cutting to the chase, where do you see them, without Ja? Are they just below that play-in tournament line, or are they kind of in that 14 to 15 range in the West?
They're right there. I think that they are right there at the edge, right? Like I certainly don't have them now in the play-in because of the fact that when I see what the other teams that I didn't have or didn't give much consideration to as far as, the ability and the propensity for them to win, it certainly sets the Memphis Grizzlies back a notch. But I'm not going to go as far as to say they're going to be completely at the bottom. I let me put it like this. I know this sounds kind of crazy. I feel like I have a little bit more confidence in the Memphis Grizzlies as a young competitive basketball team to try and maintain, especially in the Southwest Division, than I do about what's going on with the Golden State Warriors. Now, I'm not saying that Steph Curry and Draymond Green, when he eventually comes back, and that team doesn't position themselves to compete. I'm just saying that Pacific Division is tough as hell if you've already got the Phoenix Suns at 5-1, the LA Clippers at 4-2, the LA Lakers at 4-2. The expectation is that they're going to be beating up on the Golden State Warriors. So the only team that they should be able to get through are the Sacramento Kings, who right now are 3-3. So by no stretch of the imagination, the Golden State Warriors cakewalking through anything to position themselves in the playoffs. But if you're the Memphis Grizzlies and you're competing, you have opportunities to get games from the Houston Rockets, from the New Orleans Pelicans, from the San Antonio Spurs, and even from the Dallas Mavericks. So there's opportunities there if they compete to stay within that stretch of them trying to play themselves in, especially if Ja Morant's not going to be gone for a portion, like a great portion of this season. The bigger question to me, Shaw, I think, is where does this team improve? Do you want to see them improve offensively, or do you want to see them improve defensively? I beg to differ that if you are the Memphis Grizzlies and you lose a guy like Ja Morant, this is your opportunity for you to improve defensively, right? Like, you really do need to improve your defensive abilities, because Ja Morant's not a ball stopper. So him coming back, he's enhancing your offense. But the Memphis Grizzlies need to invest more time in playing more physical basketball, being able to defend the ball a little bit better, limiting opportunities against the opposing teams. That's going to keep them in games. And while they are upping their opportunities to shoot, that is going to increase their chances to probably win games. But I want to see them improve defensively, something that you said, Shaw, is going to be really important for this team, whether they have Ja Morant or not.
It is. And the funny thing about this right now, as we record, early in the season, a lot of those numbers are skewed for some high scoring affairs to begin the year when Ja was healthy, but they're sixth in pace. So does that pace now slow down with slow-mo as your primary ball handler and Tyus Jones? Those guys.
You get a kick out of using it. You get a kick out of using the throwing out the word slow-mo.
I just don't understand. I don't know where that came from.
I'm telling you, if there, I'm sure this will not be the only time that we talk about the Memphis Grizzlies and Kyle Anderson, but I will find some kind of soundbite or clip for slow-mo, because you are infatuated with slow-mo.
It's a wild nickname. And I mean, I wouldn't want it if I was an NBA player, but he's having a fabulous start to the year. I think contributing across all categories, especially with his ability to shoot the three ball right now a little bit as well too. Kind of a standstill shooter. We kind of know what it is, but very low to the game. Low to the ground type of game. Go ahead.
Do you have confidence in? Let me ask you this question: do you have confidence in him being a considered person for most improved player if he maintains these numbers even when Ja Morant comes back?
I think it's him hands down if he maintains these numbers. I mean, what are we at right now? 16, 9, and 4. I just, nobody saw this coming. Maybe he did. Maybe the Memphis Grizzlies did.
Yeah, he did. He was just telegraphing it to you. He was using Morse code. He wasn't really trying to tell it to you.
I mean, if this is who this dude is, great. But I find it hard to be sustainable especially not necessarily when Ja comes back, but if Jaren Jackson comes back or if Justice Winslow comes back, like, that's just timeshare and minutes that he won't be getting in touches. He will not have an opportunity for. So, if he's somehow able to do it, great, and more power to the Grizzlies. And then they're going to be a more formidable team in the Western Conference than we think. Again, I have them probably sitting at 12-ish. But we have a couple teams at the end of the day, I think you made a great point, that are off to some interesting starts in the West. So it's so early to know, like, everyone's kind of even because they just played, 5-6 games total. Everyone's kind of in that same mantra. But as we record, the Nuggets are 1-4. They're not going to be this bad all year. So they have got to kind of get into the playoff mix. But Phoenix is better than we even thought they were potentially going to be. The Spurs still seem somewhat relevant. Even the New Orleans, who struggled mightily with their defense, they're still above 500 at this point too. So there's a lot of teams that the Grizzlies are going to have to leapfrog and contend with no matter what it is. And I was out to begin with, and this injury does not help them in the least bit.
Yeah, I mean, again, the only thing I think you and I differ, Shaw, is you have more confidence in the New Orleans Pelicans than maybe I do. And I am not saying that the New Orleans Pelicans are just a horrible basketball team, that they're not going to go anywhere, and that Zion Williamson is not going to have a great season, or that this team is not going to have a great season. They have more than enough opportunity to prove me wrong. I just don't know I'm completely sold on them in any more different than I would be sold on the fact that I just think the Memphis Grizzlies, minus this injury and this impact, they would have probably been right there with them. And I think maybe to that degree, the majority of everyone else just emphatically believes that the Memphis Grizzlies are just not that good of a basketball team, right? They have a great player, and maybe that's all that they're focused on. But I'm just looking at this team, and I just think that this team has a lot of promise. And sometimes it takes, it's interesting. You mentioned your boy Kyle Anderson, aka Dr. Slow-Mo, right? Like, to me, he reminds me a little bit of the days when the Phoenix Suns had Boris Diaw. Boris Diaw was just that guy, man, that everything just looked like it moved at a snail's pace, but it was effective and it had an impact. And I think sometimes even when you lose a star player who puts everything in hyperspeed, having that one guy who kind of slows things down and allows you to see where these things fall when it comes to a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, that's a good thing. To probably have that kind of balance. And maybe that's what's going to probably keep this team afloat to the point where I don't have to buy into the idea that they're going to be among the worst teams in the NBA. But again, to your point, it's early, and the gap between the bottom, which to your point is ironic, that's the Denver Nuggets, to the top is a difference of 4 games. I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll see how this thing thins out and where the Memphis Grizzlies tend to lean from that point forward.
Yeah, I think Memphis' best bet really is that if Golden State is as bad as they've shown. If the Warriors are really this bad, then that's one less team that they potentially would have to leapfrog. Everybody else, I think they're pretty much legit. I mean, Houston even still, depending what ends up happening with Harden as well. If they fall out, then hey, another team that they're not going to have to be concerned about. But they've just got to find a way to tread water for the next month, and if they can do that, with the litany of guys that they have and kind of develop, Clark in this time, if Anderson can continue to play this hot start, continue to maintain his hot start rather, then they'll be all right. And they'll still have something to say about it. As I said in the beginning, they're not going to tank. They're not built that way. They like the challenge of everybody counting them out. And that's what I respect about this team. And I don't think anybody would say Memphis is a bad team. It's just the West is friggin' loaded. So if it wasn't for that, this is a team that I think would easily make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but the West is a whole different animal.
Yeah, I mean, it is a completely different animal, and if you don't pay attention, you might wind up being, one of these teams supper right now. The Memphis Grizzlies are a game and a half out of first place from the New Orleans Pelicans, who ironically right now sit at 4-2 of the division as we're recording this podcast. But we alluded to this as well, Shaw. While they certainly have done a better job scoring the basketball, right now at 112 points per game, they're giving up 116. And something has got to give. Like, this team definitely has to be better defensively in order to give themselves opportunities and chances, especially now that their superstar player is going to be down for the next month or so. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Breakdown. Coming up, we're going to be talking about our young sons. In our segment of The Drop, Sean and I talk about guys that we are adopting to be a part of the family because we think that they're going to be doing some damage for years to come here in the NBA. So check us out here on The Baseline.
Cigar City Brewing, Florida's premier craft brewery, delivers vibrant tropical flavor with high-low IPA, a citrus-forward craft beer inspired by the bold tangerine, mango, and clementine qualities of High-Lie IPA. At 4% ABV and 120 calories, High-Low IPA delivers highs in flavor and lows where you'd want them. Check out cigarcitybrewing.com for more information on this Florida original. Cigar City Brewing, Tampa, Florida. Please enjoy responsibly.
Time now for The Drop, Cali Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And our topic for The Drop, a little new nugget being added into the mix. My man Shaw, as always, with the cleverness. Everybody recalls, man, when we go through our litany of conversations of up-and-coming youngsters, guys who we definitely buy into the idea that they have something to give to the game. We go through an adoption process, my man Shaw, he loves the kids, man. He's all about the kids, man. So this is what we call our young sons moment, man. We basically start talking about a couple of the young gunners out there who we should be keeping our eye on, have a promising future in the NBA, and certainly can contribute and make some noise. So I'm gonna ride this one, let this marinate a little bit with my man Shaw, kind of feed us with who he considers as his first young son up for a conversation.
This is fun for me, dude. Like I love watching the young talent around the NBA and seeing who's kind of next on the come up. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. I think in the case of one of my earliest young sons or most recent young sons, in Terry Rozier, listen, I think in the role he was playing in Boston, perfect as somebody who you didn't have to rely on consistently. You know what I mean? I have to play 30, 35 minutes a night. He's actually having a pretty good season right now in Charlotte, after that kind of an interesting year last year with the emergence of Devontae Graham, but he's holding on and starting off great. So for me, it's always guys like that who are just about to kind of bust and really kind of come into their own. The first guy I want to talk about this year for me is second-year guy, Darius Bazley in Oklahoma City. I think this young guy really has the opportunity and chops to be an impact player. Can kind of do it all on the court. Yes, still emerging as a shooter, especially from the three-point land per se, but really has the skill set of a slasher, a guy who can get to the rim, can dunk it, very athletic, can rebound, can pass a little bit as well too. He's still kind of understanding and learning the game. So I think this is someone who you're going to hear about in years to come, especially in Oklahoma City, where they're all young sons out there for Sam Presti. He's trying to develop all those guys. But I think Bazley behind SGA is going to be someone who's going to actually have a very, very good season, maybe turn some heads out there in the NBA this year.
All right. Well, I definitely like that. And, we mentioned Darius Bazley last year through the playoffs. I don't think he was given enough opportunities for him to have an impact for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I don't know whether or not it would have changed the outcome of them against the Houston Rockets, but I certainly liked what I saw when he was getting minutes from that Billy Donovan version of this team. And so now I think now that they have transitioned themselves differently, I think it's important that the Thunder figure out a way to make sure that he gets the kind of looks that he's been getting already, because you can clearly see the way that he's contributing. So I really like him as your young son. I don't know where you have him sitting at the dinner table, but he's definitely closest to the mashed potatoes, which I'm completely fine with that. My first young son, and I'm gonna throw this first person out right now because I'm feeling really salty right now. Like I'm just really salty right now. As much as I respect the Philadelphia 76ers and the success that they already have at the early outset of the season, I think to my surprise, I didn't expect them to only have one loss, after 6 games. But I think this is the impact that you have when you've got a veteran Hall of Fame like head coach in Doc Rivers running that ship. I think you can already see the initial impact with this basketball team, because you clearly didn't see that with Brett Brown. And there's nothing against Brett Brown. I just think that that clearly there is something that's resonating with Doc Rivers and the accountability factor and what he wants to see from his young stars. And for this team collectively to have a successful season, that's what's already being produced. But I'm feeling a little salty about the fact that Doc Rivers is not giving my man Matisse Thybulle the adequate playing time that I think he so richly deserved coming out from last season. I like bulldog players, man. I like guys that like to get up physically, are not intimidated, and who can contribute in different ways. One of the things that I think is going to be the staple mark for the Philadelphia 76ers is their ability to play defense. And while Ben Simmons is doing a great job and has been doing that since he's donned a 76ers uniform, and his offensive skill set is still ascending or has the potential to ascend, you need bulldog players on that team coming off the bench and contributing in a variety of ways. And that's what Matisse Thybulle has been doing for this team, last season, and what I was expecting coming into this season. Now, he's not been getting the minutes, although an injury to Fergus Kirkmas is allowing now for Doc Rivers to say, okay, well, we're going to start playing him. I don't see where Kirkmas was better than Thybulle. And to me, I think if you are Doc Rivers, you need to figure out a way to get this guy on the floor more. I think that he stabilizes that team defensively. I think that he's a guy that I think can also help contribute offensively if given the chance and opportunity. So we'll see what happens, man. But I just like this kid. I think that this guy has got all of the tools to really be an impact role player for a playoff-laden basketball team like the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, man, I think Tybalt definitely is a 3-and-D type guy and somebody who was, I think, one of the league 3-point shooting last year for the better part of the season. Then he had the injuries, et cetera, and then kind of fell out of the rotation, kind of fell out of favor even with Brett Brown. But he's somebody who's good. He's got good size, and he kind of knows who he is, which is obviously very important in today's NBA. And we'll see if Doc loosens the reins a little bit and lets him kind of go out there. They're still trying to figure out what they're doing in Philadelphia overall. I don't think rotations are completely set, but Tybalt is somebody who I think will get some run down the line.
All right. So now I'm going to stop. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No. I mean, for me, I'm going to go ahead and cheat. I'm going to jump into my number 2. And if you will allow this.
See, that's you reaching over. That's reaching over the dinner table, trying to grab the greens before everybody else. And I got to slap you with the spoon, man. All right, go ahead.
I'm hungry.
Clearly you're hungry.
Where we going with this is somebody right now who I think depends on where you stand. Like some people feel like this guy's already arrived. Some people think, hasn't really proven it, hasn't done it enough times just yet. But for me, I was kind of banging the drum last year, banging the drum over the course of the short off season, like, people should go get this dude. And that's Christian Wood. I think the young man has really got the skills. He's figured it out. And I'm going to use a comparison that's not relatable in terms of his play style, but bear with me for a second. Remember when Hassan Whiteside kind of bounced around for a little while and then landed in Miami, and then, you know what? Hey, it started to work out there, at least for a little while. And then, Whiteside got a little ahead of himself. I think Wood is on a similar trajectory in terms of big men, but Whiteside aged out, for lack of a better phrase, because he's traditional big man and probably had the wrong attitude about how he was going to go out here and make his hay, if you will. Wood is a versatile big man who fits in today's NBA system as a guy who can actually dribble a little bit, pass a little bit, switchable. Still a little light in the ass, no doubt about it, but he's somebody who I think has ultimate potential to be a 2010 type player, and maybe two, 3 blocks a game, et cetera, et cetera. Like, he's a really good basketball player, and I'm stunned that he didn't get more offers, or Houston just came calling and that's where he wanted to go. Fine, no worries. But I think a lot of teams are going to be kicking themselves if they're not already about not trying to go get Christian Wood after what he showed in Detroit last year, especially after Blake went down and they traded Andre Drummond, and what he started off with Houston this year. I think Christian Wood is somebody who's here to stay.
Yeah, I like your pick of Christian Wood. He certainly is going to need an extra helping of the mashed potatoes given where he plays in his position. But my whole point with Christian Wood is that boy likes to eat, right? And I think right now he's starving, and I think that is translating. And I think he's in the perfect situation out there in Houston, because one, he's playing next to a guy who's also starving, and I think that they can make a great combination between him and Boogie Cousins. There's a lot of starving players, which is a part of the reason why I said, depending on where Harden sits for this basketball team, if you're Steven Silas, I don't think you should be worrying about what happens with Harden as much as you worry about what you're getting from Wall, Cousins, and Wood. I think that should be the focal point if you are the head coach of the Houston Rockets and the future for this basketball team and the organization moving forward post James Harden. Whether or not James Harden wants to buy into it, that's completely up to him. That's his future. But I think when you got a guy like Christian Wood doing the kind of things that he's doing, you don't let all of these other distractions upset that situation, and hopefully he continues to maintain that. So here's my thing. I like your pick, Christian Wood. So I'm gonna come with another young one that I think is well deserving to be in this conversation as well too, and that is Tyreese Halliburton for the Sacramento Kings. And look, I'm gonna say this right now because I think Knicks fans probably don't want me hear me saying this, but as much as I'd like Obi Toppin, and as much as I know our guy Babcock came on and said, hey, it's the logical pick. I think he's going to be really good out there for New York. I think he'll be special. He has great opportunity and potential and things of that nature. Let me be succinctly clear. This is more about how impressed I am seeing what Halliburton is doing for the Sacramento Kings than I am worrying about, whether or not he was or wasn't for the right team, because I think he'd be doing this for any of the teams that would have picked him. And I think if you are the New York Knicks and you had a question mark about your point guard situation, not picking a guy like Halliburton to address that might come back to haunt you. So you better hope your boy Obi Toppin is the top of the top for that team. Because what I'm seeing from Halliburton right now, boy, I got him lined up real nicely, sitting almost at the head of the table. Like he can come slice the turkey if he's ready to do so. 10 points per game, 50% shooting, already making an impact. And you can see that the Sacramento Kings look like a nice, well-rounded basketball team that has helped to kind of take a little bit of that load off of De'Aaron Fox and company. I just like what I'm seeing from Halliburton, man. Sneaky good type of player. I think has all of the tools, and there's some sneaky explosiveness in him. His length is deceptive, that he plays a lengthier style of defense on the court. I just think an all-around great player and nothing but good things for him. I hope the Sacramento Kings, don't bury that. I hope they figure out a way to let that flourish, because I think he's going to be one of the key components for us buying into the Kings' future moving forward.
No disagreement here, I think, with Halliburton. This is, you'll have to forgive me in our fans, but this is a shared custody situation because I love me some Tyreese Halliburton. So, we're going to go half on Tyreese here. He's become an NBA Twitter darling in the short time. I'm going to flub up this stat, but I know it's definitely for rookies, but it might be in the NBA. He's one of the league leaders in fourth quarter minutes already, in the short season. I know he's definitely leading the rookies, but he might be just one of the players in terms of fourth quarter minutes. Luke Walton cannot take him off the floor. He's just doing all the right things. De'Aaron Fox has said everything great about him. Like, he doesn't hurt you. He just knows what to do. And same as you alluded to, the Knicks, there's going to be a lot of teams that was like, damn, we should have took that dude. Like, really and truly. And the Knicks, I kind of gave a pass on draft night because they have 5 point guards, maybe none of which you think are worthwhile to keep anyway. But it was just like, it was such a hard situation to maybe add a guy like Halliburton there with Toppin still there. But it seems like it's going to bite them in the butt here a little bit. And Halliburton's somebody who I really, really enjoy so far in this early season. My last guy is a kind of another cheat as well, too, because he's really achieving it right now. But to me, because it's San Antonio, and just because he is kind of an underrated guy just in general, people aren't really paying attention and don't really seem to care.
Let me
Dejounte
before
Murray.
you get into it, let me be very clear about where I see your next young son, okay? Let me be very clear. You recall that movie Four Brothers? You remember that movie Four Brothers with Mark Wahlberg, Tyreese?
Tyreese?
Yeah, Benjamin. I can't remember that other kid's name or whatever. That's where I feel like they're like he's like the oldest son. Like
he's 24, 25. Christian Wood's 25. So I mean they're both like in their mid-20s. Dejounte is just, you've seen more because he's had a more consistent career. Wood has bounced around a little bit, but he's been in the league for a little bit himself as well too, and has finally kind of come into his own. I think with Dejounte, like when he got drafted, I was like, who's that? He didn't catch my eye even in the slightest bit. And then, a couple of years ago, it was like, all right, seeing a little bit of something there. And I'm going to throw out another wild comparison. Play styles are, again, completely different, but the career arcs are similar. Remember when Kyle Lowry started in Memphis, right? And it was just like, guy, man, he's got it. Villanova kid, all right, no worries. Then he got to Houston. Oh, hey, that guy played a little bit. And if he had his own team, maybe a little bit of something. Got to Toronto and he blew up. I think Dejounte is on a similar path. Now, Pop likes to spread the wealth, and especially the minutes around in San Antonio. And he does have DeMar DeRozan in front of him. And even kind of an emergent Keldon Johnson, who's a great, probably young son that somebody else would probably pick as well too. But Dejounte, I think, has it, bro. He's going to be a guy who contributes across the stat sheet, blocks, steals, rebounds, and points and assists. And I just really like this young dude, and I feel like he's poised. That's why I picked him as my most improved player. But that pick may not come to fruition because he just may not get enough attention, despite the great numbers that he's put up thus far.
Yeah, look, Dejounte Murray, I've often seen as a guy who he almost has to be in the right cultivated situation. And that's the reason. And the reason why I'm using cultivated is because some guys naturally establish the culture. They themselves cultivate what the culture is. But that's never been the case when you're playing for the San Antonio Spurs organization. So very similar to how you have Dejounte Murray, kind of like on the path, very similar to Kyle Lowry. I'm looking at it as you were just talking about that, in the sense that in that culture, hey, Kawhi Leonard came out of that culture, right? How long did it take before Greg Popovich kind of took the leash off of him, right? Somewhat. It was almost as if Popovich was forced to take the leash off of him, because arguably you just could not contain the potential and the talent that Kawhi Leonard brings to the table. And I think we're probably getting to that point with Dejounte Murray, because now you really don't have that many other players that you can lean on. Yeah, DeMar DeRozan is having a solid season. LaMarcus Aldridge is doing LaMarcus Aldridge things. But above and beyond standards, there's no expectations of winning championships, like you did back when you had Ginobili, Parker, and Duncan, right? In the same way that you had Kawhi Leonard. This is all about the process of recognizing who really wants to be the man out of San Antonio. And as much as it's always been about Greg Popovich and it's been about the culture, it's about how he's cultivating his star players. And does he see Dejounte Murray as a star player, I think, is what that really comes down to. So it's interesting that you buy into the idea that Dejounte Murray has that young son appeal to you, Shaw, because I've often believed that he was going to be a solid player in the NBA. And I think it was a question of whether or not his place translate into the status that we recognize as stardom for the San Antonio Spurs, because it certainly won't be reflected that way from the outside looking in, like when we look at it, right? Internally, I just wonder, will they let it flourish, or will they keep it on a leash like they've done with most of their quality players for some considerable number of years? So I really do like that pick.
I appreciate it. Dejounte is somebody who, again, the minutes restriction last year was a killer to begin the year, and he kind of just fell off a cliff, then rejuvenated in the bubble. But we'll see how it plays out, because San Antonio, again, like to spread it around. They love what's his face over there, Derek White as well too. So as a guy who's going to play alongside Dejounte in that backcourt, obviously DeRozan's still there, as we alluded to. So yeah, the minutes are going to be tough. Lonnie Walker, somebody who they also like. So it's tough. It's tough for Dejounte, but at the end of the day, he's somebody who has a lot of skill and I think can contribute across the board. And he doesn't mind if he doesn't score, but he can definitely continue to assist and rebound and get steals and things of that nature. Well, all right, man. So who you got? Is anybody left on your list, bro?
Yeah, I just have one last person, and I've mentioned him a couple of times. I know you're not completely high on him, right? So I don't know how he's going to have to fight at the dinner table, to get next to the mashed potatoes. But I really like Rui Hachimura for the Washington Wizards. Now, it's interesting because I thought that the dynamic of Beal and Hachimura allow more opportunity for Hachimura to kind of be more of a premier duo, like tandem type player for Bradley Beal. But since the trade now of adding Russell Westbrook to this team, and I don't know how long that's going to be for, I think somewhat sets back Hachimura's ascension, so to speak, because now he's got to really figure out where he's going to be. Now, he didn't immediately play, right, because he was coming off of injury. But in his first appearance, when he played against the Bulls, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and 2 shots from beyond the arc in just 25 minutes of play. This is what I like seeing from a young son, right? Like, this is the kind of guy that I think a lot of people are hoping to see still appear and maybe even form a formidable trifecta, so to speak, for the Washington Wizards. It has not translated into wins, so to speak, because the Wizards have been struggling. But I think if you're a guy like Bradley Beal, if you're a guy like Russell Westbrook, a guy who likes to get you those triple doubles, you want guys with confidence taking that shot to get you those assist numbers, Hachimura should be that guy. And I really like what I'm going to see from him, because he has a lot of opportunity to still make some noise. It's not that the ball's not going to stick only with Westbrook. I think he's going to need to start building that confidence with Hachimura, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out through the course of the year. But I really like this guy's game, and I think if the Washington Wizards have any eye on the prize about trying to get themselves in the playoffs, he is going to have to be an important piece for them to do so.
With me, Rui, I think the offensive skills are still rounding into form some, but where he can really make his hay and make a true impact for the Wizards is on the defensive side. If he can lock in that way, he will be completely invaluable because nobody else on that team cares about playing defense, with the exception of maybe Robin Lopez, who's not a plus minutes guy anymore anyway. So if he can start to do that, I'd be able to come around on Rui a lot faster. But I was very impressed, I think, with his initial, his first game and getting into that lineup. And they still have some lineup concerns, and Bertans is on a minutes restriction himself. And, Westbrook is going to be taking the second set of back-to-backs off, et cetera, et cetera. But once they're at full strength, this Washington team has a potent offense, but Rui can really make a name for himself if he can lock in defensively, guarding some 3s and 4s while still giving like some good offense, where mixing in his slashes and his mid-range a little bit too. And then maybe next year he has that 3-point shot to be a little bit more consistent.
All right, Shaw. So before we end this off, I'm really curious. I wanted to ask you this question since we've named off our young sons. And obviously one of them we are, fighting for custody. We have a custody battle going on.
Not a fair. We ain't got to fight. We can share custody.
Yeah, I'm just, you know what I'm saying. Like I'm not all about. I'm not for the quadros, bro. I'm not for the quadros. Anyway, so, but listen, I'm just curious. Who do you think is likely to have the most successful season this year of our young sons? Who do we think is capable of slicing the turkey come holiday season?
I mean, to me, that's open and shut. It's Wood, only because he's definitely not on a minutes restriction. He's going to be a featured guy. He's probably the most promising guy of anybody we've mentioned here. I think with Hachimura, we can kind of just talk about him. Tybal's fighting for minutes in Philadelphia. And then you're looking at, for me, Dejounte and the minutes restriction San Antonio has on him as well too. Like it's just tough. It's tough. So Wood projects as the guy who's going to get all the opportunity possible to make things happen for himself, and is doing so even with the turmoil surrounding James Harden. It's not going to really impact him. Whether Harden and Wall are both out there or one of them is out there, Wood's still going to get his. And I think statistically, and by the end of the season, everyone's going to know who Christian Wood is.
Do you think Wood's impact, and I know down the road we're going to have a conversation about the Houston Rockets and where we might see them, but do you think Wood's impact is going to be the end-all, be-all determining where the Rockets might be as far as the playoff picture goes? Like, would you have factored Christian Wood's contributions to facilitate more confidence in this being a playoff laden basketball team, to maybe even possibly contending, like to challenge other teams that we probably had over them in the Western Conference?
I don't think they'll be an easy out, especially if they're able to keep Harden. I mean, that really is the key. But does a Wall and Wood, Eric Gordon, and whatever they return for Harden combination get things done? No, you have to see what that would be if Harden was to leave. But as currently constructed, this Rockets team with Wood as the second player, I guess, depending on where you situate Wall, maybe they're 2A and 2B. Maybe that moniker is growing old as well too. But I think they're all going to get there simply because the offense continues to move. They play with great pace as well too, for the most part. And they're just going to get up and down the court. Wood's going to get a lot of touches. And no disrespect to even Darius Bazley and Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton is probably the second most impactful guy. Well, no, Dejounte to me is probably still going to be that, but Halliburton of the youngest of the group here is definitely probably going to stand out the most after Wood and Dejounte for me. That's why I'm trying to share custody, bro.
All right. Well, that definitely it's a fair point to be made. I don't know. The judge may definitely side with you on this one. I might concede, man. I might wind up conceding. This has been a great show altogether, man. Some great quality stuff discussing the Memphis Grizzlies and obviously our conversation on the drop with regards to our young sons. We're really curious from you guys as well, too, man. Who do you like for this upcoming season? Who do you have as your young sons? I know we're putting a lot of you guys on the spot. Some of you guys ain't ready for fatherhood just yet, but we definitely fatherhood or motherhood, but we definitely want to get your take, man, on who do you like seeing on the come up for this upcoming season. Be sure to get at us at NBA Baseline. Once again, thank you for hopping on board with us this week. We certainly had some great content to provide to you. Be sure to keep us locked for our upcoming episodes of the Baseline NBA podcast. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do, and we'll catch up with you